here, I will call attendance. Calling the meeting to order at 7:04. Valerie Anderson? No. Tony Bedini?
No.
I am here. Greg Cobb? Here. Michelle Gora?
Here.
Emily Hibbert? James Hirschfield is not here. Kelly Lott?
Here.
Jennifer Porter?
Here.
Michael Sinatra is not here. Susan Stump will not be here and is not here. Peter Tagley?
Here.
Okay. I'd like to call attention to the fact that the consent agenda was not listed on the agenda today. I think we don't need to go through the formality of a 2/3 majority quorum vote to put it on, unless anyone feels that we need to. Since it's just a consent agenda, and consent agendas are automatically passed if no one has any disapproval.
Well, if there's nothing on there, then it just goes to the next
Well,
meeting.
because we did in our packet receive our minutes from the last meeting, and I would like to move those, if we could, as a consent agenda item, as is usually done on this board.
You don't think you can do that without doing a 2/3 vote to add it to the agenda? If you leave something off the agenda, you have to add it.
Okay, can I have a motion to add the consent agenda to the agenda?
Second.
Second. We have a movement and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. Consent agenda.
And which consists of the minutes, right? Is that the idea? Probably should have made that part of the motion.
Our consent agenda usually covers at least the minutes of the previous meeting, and at this point, they cover the meeting minutes for October 7th. Do we have any objection to the consent agenda, which contains that meeting minutes solely? Okay, now we can move on to the report of the chair. I'm not the chair, and I don't have a report, but I do have a question while I'm here about the report from the real estate study that was done. Do we have one coming? Is it?
You know, I spoke to him, right after that meeting, which had to be, I would say, a good month and a half ago, and he said he would get it to me, and I haven't received it, and honestly, I forgot, so I will call again tomorrow.
Has he invoiced us?
Well, he invoiced us at first, you know, we had to pay the first
Retainer.
deposit, the retainer, and there was no cost after that.
Oh, okay,
So, but I will definitely call tomorrow.
Great.
Thank you for reminding me.
Okay, this is,
I don't know if you wanna-
pardon me? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, the former chairman never used to say he was sorry, but... And, question, I just had a question regarding real estate to the superintendent. I had requested a number of months ago that we do a survey to all of the local real estate agents. Did you mail that survey?
Yes,
to
I
all-
did.
So all the board members got the survey? Okay.
I believe I gave that,
We got
all the responses. Did you not get that?
He wasn't a board member yet, but we can.
No, I did, fine, yeah, I just want,
Yes, I
since we
haven't
were
gotten
speaking about
any-
real estate,
Any
but,
additional responses we sent to the board, there were not loads.
you know, I just thought it was a piece of information we should have.
Yeah.
The other information I have, which you reminded me, which I can get to you, is I also did an exit survey for every staff member who left and for every family who left. We sent it, and I have that information too, and I'd be happy to make copies and give it to you.
Please do.
And
Be great. We've
Okay.
had, over the years, we've requested that, and
I have that
and asked for
information.
that information, and it would really be vital,
Yes.
I think, to all of us to know.
I will get that in the minutes of the packet for next time, and we can have a discussion if you would like to.
Okay, this is our Education Committee meeting, and our item number 3 is, 3.1 is our 2013 CMT and CAP results, presented to us by Teresa DeVito and principals.
Good evening. We did pass out a booklet that has the results, so they're coming around.
Oh, while this is passing around, I also want to point out that we all have these at our places now. This is the code of values, core values that we all accepted in our retreat. And I think they're always going to be here for us now, along with our name tags, so we can refer to them as needed. Not necessarily to waggle them in each other's faces, but to at least have them here as reminders to us each occasion. So,
Okay. So I'll go through this with you. In the beginning, pages 3 and 4, I just give an introduction, specifically regarding the assessments, the CMT and the CAP. There's very specific information regarding the number of subtests, the types of responses that kids are asked, multiple choice, written, open-ended. And so there's a description here that you can certainly review, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. So that's pages 3 and 4. It is important to note that the Common Core State Standards were adopted in 2010, and the CMT and CAPT are not aligned to the Common Core State Standards, so we have shifted to aligning to Common Core, but the assessments that we've been using with the state are not aligned. So I'm just saying that because there was a dip across the state this year with CMTs, and you know, the commissioner spoke about that, and there is this level of acceptance because they don't align. The measure that will assess Common Core State Standards is referred to as Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium, and the SBAC is due to be ready in 2015, although we are applying for the field test for this coming spring. So it seems that the CMT and CAPT for reading, math, and writing will no longer exist. This will be the last review that you have of it. So page 5 is an overview of the results, students at and above goal, so in the goal range. In the first chart, there in parentheses for each of the sub-areas, you have the state average as well as the percent of students that met goal by grade and by subject area. So all the areas that were tested on the CMT and CAPT.
So the parentheses is the state?
State average, yes. And we significantly surpassed the state average. Underneath that, you have charts for individual schools and those results by grade level as well. So it's an additional breakdown of the district data in the first chart. And again, it shows the percentage of students at or above goal.
Like the first one?
Yes.
Can we ask questions? Want to wait till the end, or how do you want to do that?
questions now or at the end?
I think as we go along is perfectly fine.
Do the buildings play a role in all, and from your experience and from the principal's experience, do buildings play a role at all in test results, or is it more associated with the quality of the teachers that are in the system and the material you're presenting? What, if there are discrepancies in scores between buildings, what would be the cause of that?
Well, we all have the same standards, so the curriculum is all the same. So really, it doesn't matter what building you're in because the curriculum is going to be the same that's delivered. The factor that is difficult is the unknown. This is just one snapshot.
Right.
This is representative of just a few days of testing and how students performed on those few days. If we went back and tested them on the same assessments a few months later, it would be highly likely that they're not going to have the exact same results for the same children. So the instruction should not vary from one building to another.
Also, the number of students in a class plays a huge role. This year, as you can all see, Booth took a dip in 2 different areas. But it sometimes is the makeup of the class, so if it's a small class and you have a percentage of kids that need supports, sometimes they don't quite make where they should be, but are very close. So a school needs to analyze this, as we heavily analyze scores to see where those students were and how close were they to meeting the expectation, and if they're slightly below, we know what kind of work we need to
So
do.
it has nothing to do with the buildings. I mean, buildings are irrelevant to the
Right,
issue of test scores.
we're all teaching the same thing.
Right.
And sometimes it's newness of staff, sometimes it's the makeup of the class, and it's also the size of the class. If you have a smaller class and you have a few students who didn't quite make the mark, the percentages can tend to dip.
Research shows that the greatest impact on test scores or on learning is the teacher.
Number one factor. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Page 6, 7, and 8 is a breakdown of all the levels. So those pie charts indicate the percentages, and the blue ranges, the dark blue and the lighter, all encompass the goal range. Green being proficient, and then the tannish color, and very light green, basic and below basic. And that's for every area that's tested.
And just, I think it's important to point out, because I think for me it's been a new experience, but like a 4.8%, for example, in my building may only be one child. So district-wide, it may only be, 2 or 3 students. It's really important to put that in perspective.
Page 9. Longitudinal results. You can see across grade 3 how each grade 3 class did from 2006 on for the CMT, the 4th generation CMT. And then I know that you like to see how the cohorts did the next year and the year following, so that is color coded. Although the state does not advocate this type of analysis because the tests are different. So you will see I did include vertical scales that show student growth measures that are more accurate. So we're going to look at that later on in this packet.
I'm sorry to go back, but on page 5, at the top chart, in parentheses is the state average of all the schools.
Correct.
What is the goal number that's been set up? Do they set goals? When you say over in these other pages that you've met goal, is there a
Right, there
number
are bands,
associated?
yes, there are numerical results for the students that classify what level of performance they are in. So once they meet that criteria, they move to the goal range. But the state
Is there a
average.
number associated with goal?
Yes, there is a different number for each test. So the state average is just the average, meaning the percentage of students that met goal. And it varies by test, what that number is, the numerical value that you're talking about.
Okay, thanks.
So page 9 shows the longitudinal results in math. Page 10 is reading, and 11 includes writing at the top, and then the science at the bottom.
We're lay people. We don't work in the educational system. We do other things to earn money. what do you look at? When you look at these statistics, what do you take from them? And what are you looking for when you do these statistics? What
Well, for
exactly?
example, the way that they're currently reported out for CMT in particular, it is broken down by strands for math, by concept, so we actually get, for each student, a very lengthy report of what concepts they indicated to have mastered during that time of testing and which concepts they did not master. So it gives the teacher very specific information as to particular areas of weakness or gaps in the student's learning. And they use that information to close that gap, to make sure that the student really does understand and is able to apply the learning.
So
Go ahead.
how do you do that in the classroom? You get these scores, do evaluations of your various students in the class. How do you,
They group them. They look
Oh,
to
they
see
group
how
them.
many students didn't, they look and how many students did. You'll have times where every single student mastered particular concepts, but you're going to have commonality in other concepts. And so it's very, very important to review those results and to have your instruction match the needs of the students, because it's built on what they've learned before.
But it's also important to note that we don't only just look at the Connecticut Mastery Test. At the beginning of the school year, we have a series of assessments that we give students so that we can also compare that data with the CMT data to know where our students are.
do you develop individual aspects of the classroom program specifically to target particular needs of students?
We do, yes.
You do.
And additionally, we can also use the results to see curriculum trends. So like if we have a common strand or area that seems to be showing low achievement, that it may be related to our curriculum, and then we make revisions and adjustments accordingly.
If you said before that this is only a snapshot in time, so when you're doing your evaluation for each student, how much weight do you put to this? Not very much? Your
no.
day-to-day interaction with the student is more important than the snapshot, right?
I think it all plays a role. This is important data for us to look at. It's a good way to reflect on instruction from the previous year in individual children, but you're also going to look at other data to make a thorough decision as to where children need to go. So if the majority of your children, for instance, I'm going to use estimation even though that's an area that tends to be weak often, but say that the majority of your children know in mathematics how to estimate, and even though you knew that from this assessment, but you also gave them a math assessment at the beginning of the year, and that too told you that students knew that, you'd spend less time on that and more time on other areas that might need more instruction.
So isn't it more important to look at it from year to year, whether they're progressing,
Well,
than
it
it
is
is
important to
the
look,
snapshot for this
Absolutely.
individual this year?
This could raise red flags too. In particular, it does occur sometimes where, a student doesn't perform very well. And so the teacher's now pulling what resources they can to assist the student. But in doing so, they're discovering, gee, the student knows much more than this score shows.
Right, okay.
And so probing as to the knowledge or lack of is very important.
Thank you.
Can you take a look at the numbers on page 5 and page 11?
Sure.
I think there might be some transposed numbers.
Sure.
Down at the bottom, where it says grade 10,
Yes.
we've got science is 71.8, but that's the writing score on page 11. And we've got 55.1 is the reading
maybe
score on
it
page
is.
5, and on page 11 it's 55.1 for science. If we could just get the corrected
Sure.
sheet whenever that's
Sure.
available.
No problem.
Do you know offhand which one is correct?
I wouldn't take a guess without
Okay.
actually
All right.
verifying
I'm
for
just a
sure.
little concerned about the
Sure.
reading, so.
Sure.
Yeah, if we could get those, whichever pages that they're on.
Absolutely. Page 12 is where I introduced the vertical scale reports. And this is what the state developed and only released in 2009. So CMT has been in existence for a long time, but there was no reliable way of looking at the student progress from year to year, rather than just looking at the tests that are so different. And there are areas that are tested in one grade and they're not tested in another. So they did develop these descriptors and scaled scores. And what's included on page 13 and on are very specific vertical scale results for groups of students. So at the bottom of page 13, for math progress, in 2013, those are our 8th graders from 2013, it shows their progression in learning from 3rd grade on. And when you see the average being 605, and you look back at the vertical scale for math, anything above 578 indicates that the student demonstrates extensive knowledge of all assessed content areas. So this is a nice way to really look at how are students progressing in the district, how are they learning year after year. And so those charts are here for you, and they only developed it for CMT because CAPT is just 1 year, so you can't compare it to anything else.
That's essentially the same children's feature moving forward.
It is, absolutely, from where they were in 3rd grade in 2008, then 4th grade in 2009, 5th grade in 2010, and so on. And that takes you through page 16. And they developed it for math and for reading. Yeah, you can see it's tremendous growth with the students that start with us in 3rd grade and continue through.
Something to be proud of.
Absolutely, there's a lot to be proud of. The most frustrating thing I would say for a teacher in remembering being in the classroom is when you know students know the content, they did well on a previous assessment, and then they don't do well on the next assessment. You say, what happened? It's, it reminds me of, you're a parent, but the same parents, kids, every child is different, they're in the same household, you think you're raising them the same, and there are these things that just happen, but they're learning. They're definitely learning, and they're definitely progressing, and that's where you see the evidence here.
They're not robots.
No, that's true. The last section indicates our DIRG and where we compare in the DIRG.
What's the point of comparing us to other districts? Or what's the purpose of all of that? What does that tell you, I guess, not so much us, but what does that tell you guys?
Well, typically this is included because the board has asked and is concerned with how it all plays out in comparison with other districts that have the same economic and demographic background that we have here.
But
it fluctuates. It doesn't, you can't solidify one way or another that our kids are learning less than any other district because they might not be along high where you want them to be. The other interesting thing, and you'll turn to page 28 and notice that I did an analysis of Region 12 compared to districts in DIRG A and B. Those are the wealthiest districts. The wealthiest being DIRG A and DIRG B above DIRG C. So on page 28, all of the districts that are outlined in red are DIRG B, but Region 12 outperformed the students in that grade and in that subject area. And any district that is in bold black is a DIRG A district. And so every single grade has surpassed some towns in DIRG A or B. And I thought it was important to, again, have you notice that we really are doing a phenomenal job, and we can compete with DIRT A and B.
When you're looking at DIRDs like that, I'm looking back on 17. Do you know what the is there a big difference in curriculum between the various schools? Is that, I mean, this isn't exactly apples to apples, right? I mean, they don't, everybody doesn't teach the same curriculum, correct?
Well, Connecticut did adopt Common Core state standards. We are supposed to be now nationally, with the 45 states that have also adopted it, have the same standards.
But when you did this, that wasn't true.
They could be using different resources than we. It's possible.
And it was a transition year for
There is
everyone.
transition.
What?
It was a transition year for everyone in the state of Connecticut, because last year was really working through the Common Core implementation, as well as also supporting the expectations needed for the CMT. So teachers were really juggling two things.
But does that really affect performance, though, relative to other schools? Because if they're all juggling, then aren't you all in the same boat? Or are some juggling more balls in the air than others?
It depends on how much juggling each district is doing and individual teachers. Some teachers jump ahead and dabble in it a whole lot more than other teachers, and then the skills are different for the CMT than the
Right.
Common Core,
So you really don't have any way of knowing, so it's really almost pointless to stack yourself up against other districts when you're in a transition phase, because you really don't know what this means.
Well, this is the world we're competing in. This is what gets reported in the papers.
But it isn't though,
but-
because if you're, I mean, if for example, you had decided that you were going to shelve the Common Core and just teach the same thing as the test, you might be blasting everyone out of the ballpark because they're all teaching a different set of standards. On the other hand, if you jumped ahead and really emphasized Common Core big time, and the other districts were all teaching the prior standards, they'd be outperforming us. Neither would tell us anything though, because in the one case, in the other case, it's the same situation. You're not aligned. Until you're all aligned, teaching the same thing, Common Core, and testing for it, that's the only time it starts to get valuable, I would think.
Well, and still the greatest effect of performance in school is your teacher, by research.
Okay.
My point was simply that this is reported because that's the world we're competing in. These tables don't have any impact on daily instruction, but we should be reporting them to you because that's what our constituents will be reading in the paper.
Well, the question, I guess, is that this year I'm not so thinking that any things that might be perceived by some as deficiencies really matter because of the change in the alignment. I think everyone's going to have to take a couple of years of holiday of worrying about these test scores. So I'm not really, but I guess the question is, does it mean anything that, for example, that we did not outperform, if we're competing against A and B, that we didn't outperform anyone in grade 3, 4, 6, and 7 science? Does that really matter? Does that mean there's an issue with our science curriculum, or is what I said before matter, that this is just a bad year for comparisons? Because we clearly outperformed a lot of schools in those districts in other areas.
We don't test science in those grades.
Or is, that was my other
We only
question.
test science in 5th
Is
and
in
8th.
fifth.
And
Right.
8 and 10.
And then the 10th.
So we don't test it in those years.
All right, well, another example, grade 6 reading. We
There you
didn't
go.
outperform anybody in grade 6 reading, and I know we teach reading
There you go.
in grade 6. So you're right, those were bad examples. In the future, you should have an X through that column. I had forgotten that we only teach those grades. Okay,
Kelly
thank you.
Hadford.
I'm a big fan of Common Core, and I think, Greg, that if you look at the Common Core materials, any school who's doing a creditable job with teaching is already at acceptable or great Common Core standards. I don't think there's anything in there that any great Connecticut school isn't already doing, that any great teacher isn't individually already doing. There's not a lot of surprises. It's just really great teaching practices and great content. So if a school or individual teacher in a classroom happens to already be teaching in that style, with that excellent content to a high level, with high academic expectations, then they're going to have no problem adjusting to Common Core. If a whole school is teaching that way, they won't have a lot of trouble adjusting to Common Core. So I think some schools will just, they've always been doing it that way, they'll continue to do it that way. Other schools will have to adjust. I would expect that we would have a lot of great teachers who are already teaching this kind of content and quality. So I don't think there are going to
They
be
are,
too many
but
surprises.
I do think that there are some changes and there's some adjustments that we have to make. It's exciting, it's an exciting time in education, and you're absolutely correct. I think when you teach SBAC-like and Common Core, there are, I guess, less skills to teach, but more in depth. And it's a different approach, so the approach is really different. And
The
it's
schools
really
who've been
getting
doing
it
that-
wrapped around,
The
getting our
schools who've been
minds
doing
wrapped
that will
around
make
it.
a nice, even transition. And I think that will come out in how everyone shakes out after the first couple of years of testing, because, as has been noted, everyone's going through this change. It's not just us, every school around. So,
If my memory serves me right, and it may not, but since I've been on the board, we've had, I believe, the same sort of trend between grade 8 and 10 where, for instance, the science and writing, and I'm just picking those on page 24, 26 for now. They drop off from the 8th to the 10th grade. Do we understand that?
Remember, they're not really comparable. CMT and CAP are not comparable at all. Very, very different skill set for each. That's why there are no vertical scales to jump from CMT to 10th grade CAP.
Okay.
I think though that if Tony's looking at pages 24 and 25, he's looking less at the actual score and more of our placement within the DERG. And so maybe we could speak to that part.
Our scores need to rise.
Yep.
I can say it very simply. In the course of, Teresa and Lori have been, Lori Ferrer, our assistant principal, have been looking very carefully at curriculum. Our Curriculum Tuesday sessions have, as we align to the Common Core and as we take a deeper look at what's included in the curriculum, not, what we're doing is uncovering those things about curriculum that need great focus and attention. Teresa and Lori have created scope and sequence for 6 through 8 and several units of instruction in language arts at the high school. Teresa's also hired a consultant for math. So all these things, looking at these things deeply, regardless of whether it looks good in 8th and bad in 10th, the scores simply need to rise. And the reason why I'm saying what I'm saying is because we're doing very specific and explicit things to make that happen.
Good, that's awesome.
And when you refer to page 25, when I take it to page 28, we still outperformed districts in DERG B, even though we were not at the top in DERG C, we still, so there are struggles
I
happening.
think also, one of the things I brought to the board's attention last year was the schedule. One of the biggest problems with the schedule is that students did not have continuous instruction in math and science, and it shows in our scores. You cannot not have math or science for 6 or 8 months and then expect to take a state test and do as well as kids who have continuous science and math continuously for semesters. So I think with the work we're doing in curriculum, with the focus that Kim and her staff have on continuous improvement, with the new schedule, we are definitely going to see improvement.
Pat, though, the only thing though that doesn't quite ring true to me on that, I mean, I'm not doubting, I mean, I think you're right about that. But on reading and writing, we're also not shaking the tree either, at least in the 10th grade caps. I mean, we're near the bottom of the DERG on both of them. We're second lowest in reading and you're fourth lowest in writing. So what do you think is the problem or the issue there as to why the performance was at that level?
You know, I don't want to go into it too deeply as far as things that we found, but I think what we're finding as we look deeply into curriculum is that the block really had an effect on instruction and what was total engagement for a long period of time. Because kids didn't have as many classes, there was not as much nonfiction writing and reading that was going on, where you'll see that more now because they have more electives and you'll get more of those skills. I think we're doing a lot of work with raising the rigor, bringing in more engagement, more higher level questioning as we work on the Common Core and embedding that into instructional practices. So I think it's really about, raising the bar and continuous improvement in this building. And I think Kim and her administrative team with Teresa and the staff are realizing that as they start to look at the Common Core and see where we are and where we need to go. But it's a mind shift and a big change. It's not something that happens very easily. So it's working with staff, it's providing support for them, it's helping them work through some of the things they always did and how can we make it more engaging and how can we raise the level of rigor. And those are the conversations that are going on Tuesdays. Kim has Curriculum Tuesdays, where she has groups of teachers working with Teresa and/or Lori. She has PLC time, where teachers are looking at student work, seeing, what their goals are, their student learning objectives, and are we meeting them? Looking at the grade book, seeing what a B is in one class to a B in another class. So there's a lot of layers as you start to peel the onion that have to be addressed, and we are working on them. And I think, we have a really good team in place, and everybody's doing a great job, and none of us are happy with these scores. There are definitely bright lights in them.
Definitely.
But as we said, we are moving from, CMT kind of test to Common Core. That's a lot of changes. We've made a lot of changes in the schools, and we're looking for continuous improvement. So we're hoping that every day we're doing things that are going to improve student achievement.
Also, the simple fact of the matter is, with greater efficiency under Dr. Cosentino's leadership, we were able to have an intervention program, which we haven't had since I arrived. It was cut about 3 weeks before I got here. And we are also able to have common planning time, which I have not yet worked in a high school that had that. This is a first here. You cannot expect to have a great deal of improvement when you eliminate interventionists at a certain level, when you eliminate common planning time at a certain level, and when you have a limited amount of expertise in the curricular areas. I'm not a curriculum writer. Teresa and Lori are expert in that area. That's been needed. That's been needed. That's why you did not see a classic description of an assistant principal. You saw an example of knowing where the need is, my knowing where the need is, and putting that in place.
Can I ask the elementary school principals, what grade do we start teaching science in the elementary school?
Kindergarten.
Kindergarten. So that's no good reason for that being less in the 5th grade then.
One of the things that we have to acknowledge, though, is the CMT tests all the skills that have been previously learned. So for a 5th grade teacher, one of the things that they have to grapple with is how to review some of the concepts that may have been learned in 2nd and 1st grade. So it's a bit of a challenge for them, given the fact that they have their own science curriculum to also teach. So we have found ways to help them do that, but it's an area that still, we need to address in creative ways.
And I know you do that in terms of, it's called spiraling, isn't there, something along those lines, where you
Well,
revisit the
There
topic?
there are some related concepts along the way, but we also recognize a child in kindergarten may not be ready developmentally to understand or receive some of that information. So it is thinking about that, and as Emily has said, we're reviewing lots of those skills as we keep moving along. So one class may be doing rocks and pebbles, and another one might be doing soil. So it is related, but if somebody misses something along the way, it poses a problem.
And the test is very specific to the scientific method.
but also content. So the science test is really driven by, do you know the phases of the moon? Do you know the different types of rocks? So those students do need to remember a good deal of vocabulary. Although they may have had rocks and minerals in 3rd grade, they need to remember sedimentary rock and metamorphic rock for 5th grade. So it is a lot of reviewing of content.
And that's not going away. The science
Right, that will
CMT
have
is
to
staying for 5th, 8th, and 10th grade.
On top of it.
On top of the SBAC.
Yeah, that is correct. So the last page references school performance index, which is part of the accountability system, but the state encountered some errors and did not release school performance indices for this year, but we expected that there really wasn't a change from previous years. And like Emily said a little while ago, in a district this size, a minor change can seem like a significant shift when you look at percentages, because we are very, very small. And I do reference that in the introduction.
The soft thing we always talk about. Just one quick question before I get to Kelly is, I know one of the biggest changes between, one of the biggest changes that Common Core is establishing is the whole kind of meta sense of explaining your work more. And that is something that is starting in at the earliest stages and obviously proceeding. How do you find that? Do you find that is a difficult thing to introduce systematically? Is it something that is immediately enriching the class time? Is it something that is a hurdle that's overcome and then just becomes part of what they're used to doing? And how have you found that whole aspect of what's the word for it? Self-assessment almost going in at the earliest ages? How easy or difficult is that?
It's better if it happens at the younger ages, because as students get older, they want to say less in a classroom environment, even though they're very social. So the earlier, the better. I think the progression helps with the older grades.
And I think a combination, we've been always asking our students to explain their work. So, but in addition to explaining their work, we're also asking them to collaborate with others, to gather information from others, and that's big. Teaching them the skill of collaboration in an appropriate way, and then to self-evaluate. So there's some other components added to that.
And I think additionally, we're asking students to provide evidence with nonfiction text. And so we're increasing that, which nonfiction text is a little more difficult to read and comprehend. And then we're also encouraging students to look at multiple resources to come up with evidence and a position. So it might be fiction and nonfiction. It might be a video clip. It might be an illustration. And what does that all communicate? And then to put it together to make sense of it. So it's creating a task that's a little bit more interdependent with a lot of resources and skills.
And students may be asked to read a variety of different pieces and sit in a group and be able to have to explain what they read to give more information. And that's where that collaborative piece comes into play.
And then go back and write about it and
Right.
communicate, present something about it.
Are you already starting to see the benefits of that extra level of introspection of method, or is it too soon to see?
I think it's a little soon yet. I mean, we've started doing that, but again, it's teaching them the skill to do that. It's teaching them how to be appropriate in groups and what does it really look like when you're actually collaborating about something and focused on a topic.
Kelly?
Yeah, in trying to get a handle on the grade 10 reading score, which is probably the least pleasing to me at all the other excellent scores, there's a drop-off, and I've seen that before in other years between our elementary and our early middle school and then grade 10. Could the board, maybe at a Board of Education meeting for the Education Committee, request that you take a look at what the actual curriculum is right now in 8th, 9th, and 10th grade for reading, and see what kind of literature, what kind of nonfiction the kids are exposed to, what's in the curriculum now, and then also where they believe it'll be going with the Common Core. I don't want to just see the Common Core because I'm familiar with that. I'd like to know what it is we're doing now, so we can compare how we're going to grow and really work on getting that number up, because something obviously isn't
Absolutely.
gelling, because there's so many
We-
great scores in earlier grades.
We, yes,
In
or
the
we
mix
can
right
get
now,
Lori
a
here
curriculum
at a meeting to really talk, and maybe even Chris Chagru, who is the instructional lead at Humanities 612 now, and they can talk to you about the shifts in the curriculum. But part of the issue that we have with the high school, and Kim brought it up, it's twofold. Number one, high school teachers were never taught how to teach reading, and that's not Chapag, that's just in general in pre-service. They don't know how to teach reading. They are mostly content specific. Even English teachers who go for an English degree, they're not taught how to teach reading. They're talking about literature. They're talking about making connections to real world, all of those big themes. So one of the things that Lori's working on is working with teachers to help them to teach reading. That's the first piece. The second piece is we have students who have gaps in their skills. And in the high school and even in the middle school, we're much better as an educational system in the state of finding those gaps in little children. They stick out like sore thumbs. We have people in the schools, resources who help them, interventionists, paraprofessionals, and do some real quick work and help them to fill in those gaps. When the students get older, the gaps get wider, and they're less evident to teachers because they're not trained to look for it. So the intervention period is really important because now it's going to help us to find the gaps through our assessments, okay, and through teaching and looking at student work, and then really zero in on those gaps for kids. So maybe I'm a student who needs help with vocabulary, or needs help with context clues, or needs help with finding evidence when they're reading these nonfiction or fiction texts. And we're working in that area. But I'm happy in the next, we have a couple of full meetings, but in the next maybe, yes, 4 weeks, we can bring Lori in and she can give you an overview. And Kim wants to add, and then we'll continue. Who do you want to go first? Kelly for follow-up, or Kim to add?
I'm always going to defer to Kelly. if you don't
Okay,
mind.
Kelly, go ahead.
I have no
Quick follow-up.
Yeah.
What I'd really like to see is, I appreciate the part about the skills and enhancing skills in terms of the teachers and their approaches. I'd like to know what the kids are reading.
Right.
What's assigned in 8th, 9th, and 10th grade? What actual books, at whatever, at the various levels? Because I've asked that question before, and I'm still unsure as to what that answer is. What are our kids reading in 9th grade?
We
What's their curriculum?
We can do that,
Yeah, I would-
absolutely.
I would really like to see
And
that.
we're working on revising that.
Yeah, I
right
know, I
now.
understand, that's what I mean.
Yes.
And then maybe you can tell us where it's going.
Yes.
Because I'd like to get a really good handle on what are these
Absolutely.
kids reading and where are we going with it in terms of specific titles,
Right.
What are they really reading during 8th grade? What are they reading in 9th grade? And then let's see how that'll change for Common Core.
Okay.
Yeah, just in between you and Kim, is that helpful? Because, and maybe, these things, these theories change, but from what I understood is that the most recent model of reading was that it doesn't matter what you're reading if you're reading. And I know a lot of libraries function on this ability, and we've talked about this, that whereas you were very happy to have Scientific American for boys, now, World Wrestling Entertainment Magazine for boys is just as good to get a boy to read, and where you might have something similar for girls, whatever she wants to read is good to get her to read, as opposed to being overly concerned about what exactly it is, as long as they're reading something.
I'd like to be a little bit more specific than that. I think that's some of the ways that we get these gaps as the kids get older and they make more of their own choices. One of the things that we are looking at very closely is the level of what they're reading. If you're reading Shakespeare, or you're reading Huck Finn, or it's not the title, it's not who wrote it, it's not, but it is it fiction or nonfiction? And what are the skills that are embedded in them? And that's where from 6 through 12, we've been very content-driven in this school system. It predates Teresa and me, but it won't be that moving forward, excuse my awkward sentence. But another thing that has happened is there are many less what we call dipsticks or benchmarks that we can measure at the upper grade levels. So when we were, and Dr. Cosentino knows this very well, I was not a fan or in favor at all of having our staff write our dipsticks, our measures of performance, because if you do that, then you're going to be measuring the same things you always measured. We needed a standardized test that could be administered to all students and then could be informed that intervention process. In the next 2 weeks, we will have one. We're starting our training on NWEA. This is new to this district, but it's not new to other districts. And what it will provide is the English teacher who believes a child reads beautifully because they're articulate will find out that they're not comprehending too well. They're just articulate, but it doesn't mean that they're comprehending. They're able to pick up nuance from the teacher's speech and give it back to them, but they don't necessarily get it themselves. These are the things that are very important, and when it comes to instruction, those reading levels become even more important. Because if you're always, we call it a frustration level, and thank you, independent level, I kept wanting to say comfort, and instructional level. Those are very important levels. So we are very passionate about heterogeneity, and I'm very passionate about heterogeneity, because I believe the world that they will compete in is heterogeneous, okay? However, if we continually try to instruct kids at their frustration level, then we're teaching them how, then we may very well, without meaning to, be teaching them how to be frustrated, but to figure out a way to be articulate about it. So these are the very, very important things that have simply not been available to us. And now that they are available to us, those kind of notions that we have about our students will become very different. Many times we'll be right on target. This kid does this well, this kid does that well, but sometimes we can get fooled by the strength of their personality, by the way they've learned to parrot us and make us believe that they understand. So NWEA and the reading levels that are involved in instruction are probably the two most important things that you'll hear us talk about this year. Just to cycle back and get to the real point of it, which is happy to provide the title study, but frankly, that's not what matters. When we're providing the titles, I want you to look for what are those reading levels, and I can supply for you the materials that I referenced to the board, excuse me, not just to you. Let me not misspeak. The scope and sequence for 6th to 8th grade, where you will start to see vertical alignment and the injection of skills into this system. And what's really nice about this, I'll go back to something that I can't provide you evidence for other than anecdotal. Our teachers that are a part of the curriculum writing process with this sort of specificity are finding it very, I don't want to use too strong of a word, but they're really very enthusiastic about it because they are learning new skills. And nothing makes teachers happier than that. So I'm happy to supply any information that Dr. Cosentino asks of me. However, I'd like you to pay attention to those standardized benchmarks that we've created, the reading levels that we are examining with specificity, which is not typical of a secondary school, and then the product that we're able to produce for you.
And I just want to add to that because I think it's really critical to note that text levels really important. And additionally, the type of questions that we need to ask that drive students back into the text. So we're spending time re-looking at text, seeing it a second time, seeing what the messages are, and really helping students look through the author's eyes and to say, why did the author choose those words to communicate that? Why did the author choose that message? What do you think the author is trying, what position do you think the author is taking on this topic? So a little shift in the questions as well as they are doing a closer read through text, which is going to give more evidence as to are they really comprehending. Because students, we do know, can listen to a lot of dialogue and say things, and we think that they've got it. But if we really point them back into the text, can they take it out themselves? So we're really spending a lot of time with very specific text-based questions to help students.
And there are explicit skills that teachers need to help students to learn this that have not been common to secondary programs, but they will be.
What's NWEA?
Oh goodness, you're gonna,
Northwest
Teresa.
Evaluation.
bless your
She's
heart,
our
Teresa.
specialist
It's
over
a
there.
standardized test of specific skills for secondary students.
Well, all
It
students.
is for all
K-12.
students as well, but what's different about it here is that we haven't had that.
Okay.
It's certainly not at the high school level.
And we will bring that to you. That, it's also very much like the SBAC, where it is a, what's the word? Assessment when it cha-
Adaptable.
Adaptable. So for example, if every student does not get the same test. You may start with the same question, but then I got it right, I go to a higher level. This next child got it wrong, they may get a different question. So it's similar to the SBAC, where it keeps challenging you and it keeps raising the bar. I will bring it to the board. It was, we just rearranged some of our PD money. We didn't buy something, and I don't remember what it was, but we can, it's definitely money well spent. And we're all being trained, the whole system, November 1st. It's used by, I would say, half of the school systems in the state, including New Fairfield and my old place and Brookfield.
Would that be better?
I didn't say that. I did not say that. I didn't say that.
Kelly?
I appreciate the effort that the teachers have made to really expand their skills. And I think that I have more confidence in that than you may believe. I think our teachers are really terrific. And I see them making efforts with these kids. The kids speak so highly of them. I'm more wondering, frankly, when I look at the relative performance of that grade 10 reading score, whether it's not the curriculum and the actual books we've chosen or not chosen, that's actually
And we're
at
looking at
the
that
root of
too.
it. So that's really what I'm looking at. And I know that, you may have several tiers of students in any given, even small English class. What are they reading, and are we giving them the content they need? And maybe that's where there's something we could work on in terms of our, especially as core curriculum is coming.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Oops. Go ahead.
That's all right, I don't have a question. I realized there were no other questions. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming, because I really appreciate having the principals here to give us their hands-on analysis of this. And thanks, Teresa, because I really liked this presentation. I found it really clear. And I was looking at the longitudinal results, and I know we're not supposed to, but I really found for all three, with very few exceptions, if you look horizontally and vertically, there's growth. Like if those were on bars, we would be seeing that the third grade over those, 7 years grew. But we'd also be seeing, I think we've seen evidence here of our curriculum improving, because all of 2013 is looking better than 2006. So I feel like there's a lot of good stuff going on here, and I'm looking forward to more. So thanks.
Well, I'm glad I was interrupted. Was that about six? Was that the same thing? I don't have to. Thank you.
Yeah, I also have more.
Oh,
Right.
oh, I'm sorry.
Second half, Todd, with Todd now.
Right, okay, so I'm gonna do Todd first.
Is that where it
Pass
says?
it out.
Come on up, Todd, have a seat. While the principals are sitting down, it is National Principals Month. So I just want to thank our three principals. They do a terrific job. They're very dedicated to our students and our community, and we are very fortunate to have all three of them in the region. So thank you, ladies. Appreciate it.
They're getting a special treats.
I don't know, I haven't decided yet. It's hard to...
And the rest of the month, I guess.
Yeah.
It's assessment night, so we have a little packet put together regarding ACT, PSAT, and the SAT for you. The cover page kind of highlights some things to be excited about. For the ACT, for the 5-year trend, we have the strongest results that we've had. And there are increases noted in math, reading, and science. For the PSAT, the class of 2014, the class that will be graduating this school year, we see significant gains in their college readiness results. We had 46 students that took the assessment in 2012. and when they were in 10th grade. And then in 11th grade, we had more students take it, and we're seeing, progress there. And also noted is the 10th graders that just took it in 2013, a high correlation there of over 60% being college ready. So we are looking to continue to increase that percentage and hopefully get more students to also take the PSAT, because it's a voluntary thing for them. And then the SAT, the areas of greatest gain in 2012 from the previous year to 2013, where it's critical reading 11 percentage points and writing up 10 percentage points. And then there's supporting documents that are attached to this cover sheet.
I hate to ask a dumb question, but if you have a number of students who are in 11th grade, of the students that are 57% college ready, and that's defined as being on track to be college and career ready, what can you do within their final year or year and a month or so to improve that? Or do we generally, and I don't think so, or do we generally have only about 60% of our students going to college? We go, we have
Oh, maybe more than that. Yeah,
So
and I'll talk
there
to
is a
that.
gap apparently there that I guess you're gonna talk about is
If
how
you jump in, if we
bridge
want to
that.
jump into the, I think that'll become clear as we jump into the reports. The ACT, which is the blue sheet, you can see the bottom line of that first box, the 5-year trends, and that highlights the class of 2013. You can see our number of students tested, and then you can also see that the trend statewide has been increasing. And the ACT has become much more popular in colleges. It's become more popular in our state, and it's become more popular at our school. And I hope that that trend continues. You can see near the end of that, all the way to the right, the composite is the strongest in the 5 years of our report within that box at 24.8, the average composite. And then you can also see the state has also increased over the last 5 years. We're trending higher than the state. If we jump to the PSATs, which is the two beige colored sheets, you can see on the college percentage, that is a standard that the College Board has put together. That they've determined that students that score in a certain range on the PSAT, they also do this for the SAT, are what they determine to be college ready. That has nothing to do with our school or what we would determine a student to be college ready, but it's this composite of their data based on success in college of students within the same score range that they've tracked for years. So if we look at the first one, this is a 10th grade from 2011-12. You see that we tested 46 students, the top number on the right, and then the College Board determined that based on their scores, they were 47.8% college ready of those students.
They also include what the national percentage is, which is significantly low.
We're trending way above the national trend. The next page on the back of that is the 2012-2013 11th grade, 56 students. Of those 56 is determined based on their score, that 57.1% were college ready. You can see the national index there at 46.3. Okay. And then the next one is our current 11th graders in 2012-2013. 57 of them took the test, and they were determined by College Board standard to be 61.4% college ready, whereas the nation was only 38.5%. Michelle?
So for the first two, it's the same class?
Correct.
They're sophomores and then juniors. Do you find, is it the same kids taking the test again, plus then some more, because more kids took it, or is it a different group?
It tends to be the same kids plus some
Plus
more.
a few?
There
Okay.
are some students that will not take it junior year, and that's an interesting fact for me, because it is a junior year test. This has been my third year of promoting the PSAT as a school-based test on Wednesdays. One of my concerns 4 years ago was that we were having such a low turnout on Saturdays in the 30s, and it was hard to get kids to come. And I didn't feel that that really connected to what they were going to be doing in the future. And as part of the push for college and the push for college readiness, I really felt that we needed to go to the Wednesday test, and that has really turned around. So we're trending about 80%, 70% of the sophomores and juniors total taking the PSATs, which I think is a nice step for them, getting some information about where they are, what does a standardized test look like. And so of those kids, the majority of them do continue to test in junior year.
And another reason to really try to promote this experience is that it is significantly different than the CMT and CAP. Where when you don't answer correctly, you do get penalized. I mean, the questioning, everything is so different that it would be beneficial to the students to take it before taking SAT.
So, in other words, when you have, on the second sheet, 56 11th grade students, presumably that year, not this year, that year,
Yeah.
there were probably about 80 students in that class. So there were 76 or 80.
Yeah.
So there were probably 20 kids who didn't take it.
Correct.
And so of those kids, there probably were some who perhaps would have fallen under the not college ready and some who would have fallen under the college ready. So it wasn't perhaps a cross-section, or is it lean?
I guess my argument it has been and will be that all students are post-secondary ready. And I think this is a part of the information I would like them to have in some way, shape, or form. Now, the PSAT may not be appropriate for all students, but I'd say majority of students.
Well, that's what's confusing me,
Yeah.
is the dichotomy between what this reveals on this national level of college ready and what we consider college ready, and how, I mean, there's obviously standardized testing clearly in this case is not a one-size-fits-all, but it does give some kind of indication, and I'm just wondering how even on a personal level, a child receives results. It says he's not college ready when he's planning on going to college. How do you deal with that personally? And then how do you deal with it in terms of what you assess as being college ready? How do you deal with that discrepancy?
Yeah, the mark is right around 50-ish, like 51 in the PSAT language. 510 to 520 is about the mark that the College Board uses. So I think one of the big pieces of information that comes back on this report that I really like for students and families is that there's a lot of extended practice on PSAT, some embedded practice on the College Board website, and just by taking this test, they get access to that, and it's free resources by taking the test. The test costs $16 to purchase, and it's costing us about $18 per family to take the test here. To offer it on the Saturday, you have to take proctor, so it tends to be at other schools upwards to $24 to $25 because you're paying proctors to do it. So for us, there is a cost savings for families that way. Michelle?
For the third report
Yep.
here, for the PSAT, so for the sophomores, we're looking at that 61%.
Yep.
And I'm just wondering, when they say college ready as a sophomore, is this content-based? So or are they assuming it's a sophomore who would typically finish out a curriculum of a junior and senior
Right.
year?
So it's based on the sophomore standard. So the sophomore
Okay.
standard is not the same as a junior
They're
standard.
not ready to go to college as sophomores?
No,
Okay.
no. They're using it based on, and you can see our trend, the trend scores, the mean scores there, critical reading 47.9, math 45.9, and writing 48. So, and you'll see that compared to the SATs, our kids tend to be in that 520 to 515 range. So definitely below where our kids will end up. But for sophomores within the nation, very strong.
Okay, cool.
You actually have to read the nomenclature. It says on track to be college.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Kelly?
Do we have any students who have been able to compete in the National Merit Scholarship
Yeah.
as a result of the PSAT?
We have. We tend to have 2 to 4 students that make the criterion cut. This year was one of the strongest. In past years, they probably would have made the highest level, but they were. I'm going to turn to Mrs. Gallo, if I can put a call out.
Mrs. Gallo.
Yes, I'm sorry.
The language for the PSAT letters that just came out, we had 4 students.
We had 4 students who were commended from the National Merit Scholarship Corporation, and they are, watch this,
I can do it.
I know you can, and I'm drawing a blank. They are
Caroline Hermans.
Caroline Hermans, Will Harris. Go ahead, Todd.
Dana Walker.
Oh, yes, Dana Walker and,
Was it Claire Wolf?
pardon me?
I don't remember the 4th.
Oh, good.
I think
I
it's
will in a
Claire
second.
It was in the newsletter, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, it was in the newsletter.
Yeah,
It was
I
in the
think it was
newsletter,
Claire.
and
I think it was
the
Claire
kids
Wolf.
got
I
a,
think
the
it was
kids
Claire
got a gallogram about it, too.
Yeah.
So it's everywhere, and I know these. I never had to look them up when I was writing it. Right now, like, 3 out of 4 ain't bad. Can I say that?
Yeah.
In a second, I'll shout out a name. That'll be the 4th. Pardon me? Oh, thank you for doing the percentage.
We got
Look
it.
at that. He's going to bring up our math scores single-handedly.
A while back, I think you mentioned you were going to try to determine how many kids were taking remedial courses once they got into college. Did that ever happen?
No, we don't have a good track on our alumni at this point. I think one of our concerns is that there is a trend for kids that are going in that, the AccuPlacer that a lot of schools are using to determine where the entry point is. That report that we hear back from kids is that some of them are having to take that. I don't have a good answer for you. I think that's something that's a next step for us as a school, is that we need to do a better connection with our alumni as they leave us. And I think this year there was a position put in place for an alumni person. So I'm hoping that we'll get better results from that.
A lot of the
It should also
colleges
be
are-
noted that colleges only keeps track of that statistic as a school, so the only way we would know that information is if kids told us.
A
So
lot of
anything we're able
college-
to report to you is not going to be terribly accurate.
Okay. There's a lot of colleges that are no longer doing remedial work, is that
Yeah.
true?
There's a new federal law that was passed this year that's saying to colleges that they can't hold kids to that standard of having to do these courses that won't count toward graduation. And so colleges are struggling with having to differentiate a lot of their courses. Math tends to be the area most kids are falling down in. It's going to be an interesting state of affairs for kids. And I guess one of our concerns right now is what's going to happen to the community college acceptances where they have open enrollment. There was a message that came to a guidance director meeting I was at 2 weeks ago that they had heard from the community colleges in Connecticut that they wouldn't be accepting kids that didn't meet that standard. That's not true. So I've done that research. But that is a concern for students that aren't meeting that standard. It's a curricular concern for us as well. As we move forward, it's going to be really important for kids to make sure that they get those requirements before they go to that next step.
Thank you.
The next couple pages are the SATs. So following the PSAT data, we have the SAT. SAT is broken. This is from the College Board. It is the 2013 summary for that class, so it's the seniors. It's broken up into critical reading, it's into math, and then into writing. You can see it's a 5-year trend from 2009 to 13. And then you have the state and the total
I just
group.
have a general question about this.
Yeah.
Do you know why the PSAT information focuses, it gives us data not just on the middle 50%, but also on the range, the entire range, whereas the SAT data stops at the middle 50%, and it ignores the range, the full range. You know why that is?
I don't, but to be candid, I'm not really impressed with their report for the SATs. I've had a conversation with Alan Bernstein, who is our regional person. My concern last year, as I presented to the board, is that our students super score much higher. And we tend to have our students test more than once. Typically, our students are testing 3 times. And our super score was 10 to 15 points higher. And that's the score that our students are being admitted on, that they're being judged by the colleges. His answer was that they only take the final test date of your testing. So if you take it 3 times and you don't have a great sitting, which actually last year for the class of 2012, it was the worst sitting for our kids, was their last sitting, that is the one you're being held on these reports for. And I said, you know, that's not what the trend in colleges are, in why aren't you super scoring?
Yeah, aren't most colleges taking the highest score?
They
Correct.
do, but the way it's reported out, it's not reported out that way.
And the College Board is not doing that, even though they are a proponent of super scoring and benefit financially. So, you know, in terms of this, I guess it's, you know.
So who does this report?
This is the College Board. And it's the same people, but they're a different group of the College Board that does the PSAT. I think the PSAT is a much richer report. I agree.
Excuse me, it's Clara Wolf. My profound apology to Clara.
Yeah.
But answer one of your swimmers. Come on.
Oh, I said it.
He
I
whispered
didn't say it loud
He
enough.
whispered it.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you did
I
whisper
You did
it?
whisper
Yeah.
it.
I thought you had
help me
heard.
out.
Yeah, sorry.
All right, I'm sorry.
So you can see the trend, you know, for our students in 2013, the 528 is the second highest score in those 5 years. Okay, and you can see the trend down below. Nice growth between 2012 and 2013, significant growth there in the overall trend. The math, see the final score of 2013. Not as strong for that group, math. And then in the writing, the 522, significant growth over the 2012, but still an overall lower score comparatively.
You have more information?
Yeah, that was the standardized test. I have a packet around the graduating class.
High school class of 2013 report.
Valerie sent an email, she has family illness. So I don't know where it's from, but just so you know. I just saw it.
They're just different colors, yes.
Yes, I just don't know if we have enough, so I just want to make.
I have more. I think I
Okay.
counted correctly.
Keep on going.
One more?
We need one more, and we need three. We need 3 here.
But she has.
2. Thank you very much.
Okay, so what you have before you on the left-hand side is just some publications. I'm going to review those briefly. And that's just to give you a flavor of, you know, how we promote a college-going culture. And on the right side is college admission data and some stats about the class that I'm excited to share with you. The class of 2013 was a very strong class for us, and you'll see from the data that it was one of the strongest classes in the last 5 years in terms of the college admission process. The first document that you have on the left is just a flyer. This is the second year of our college the scholarship night. A very successful night that's hosted here at Chippewa and bringing a lot of the scholarship committees and groups in to offer their scholarships directly to our kids. It's really a wonderful experience. And whether I've said it here or not, you know, I am proud to be a part of a community that is so generous with their students. It really is wonderful. The second letter is just an overview of some of the college items. We are very focused on that process, although the terminology that I use is future planning, because we do understand that about 15 to 10% of our students every year go directly to work or transition. The third one is the most recent update of Counseling News, and this is part of our promotion program this year of being more electronically savvy. We're going to be using Naviance for class of 9 through 12th graders, in addition to the high school newsletters, mailings, and flyers. And the second page of this one is an example of the placard, the financial aid seminar. If you're driving around town, you'll see that probably within a week. It'll be coming up, and then also middle school updates. Next one is a placard for the college admission seminar, financial aid seminar, and the last one is a fall senior checklist. And this is really an overview of how to apply to college and where you are in that college process for seniors. There was one that went out to juniors, and we're working on a guide that's going to be ready for families of 9th through 12th graders. That's really going to give them a whole checklist for each grade, and then a sort of a pathway to that planning process. On the right side, yep, sorry.
That's okay. On the, you were just talking about this one, right, the counseling news?
Yep.
The two-page letter?
You got it.
I was just wondering, because I know we've talked about this in the past, I was looking at the middle school updates, and our eighth grade students are visited by all sorts of technical, FOAG schools, all sorts of stuff, and I was wondering, do they get a good presentation about Chicago, about staying here and what they offer?
We do an 8th grade parent night, and we talked about making it an early grades parent night. We've talked also about inviting local private school families, so Rumsey, Washington Montessori, and others, to come in and hear that presentation. I guess good is a quantity. I think it's strong. I think it's something that we need to advertise more to get more people in front
Well,
of
and
it.
this one is, I think it's, that these people come in and speak to the students, don't
Correct.
they?
Yep.
Do we do that?
We do that during the school day, and then there's a follow-up parents one at night.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because I think like there was one where.
I think 8th grade, what I've seen in my presentations to Sherman is that, the Sherman students, is that 8th grade is really too late for many families. By 8th grade, and I've tried to push my presentation to Sherman students back into I'm going to December this year, before it used to be end of January. Definitely by the end of January, most people have made their decision.
Yeah, I think.
But I see, that early grades presentation of us, and I agree with, I think the idea that you're presenting is that we need to do a better job of selling our school. Yeah, 100%.
To ourselves.
Yeah.
And Todd, I was going to ask you a question about the college acceptances and the colleges that students are going to.
Yep.
If you were to plot these on a map of the United States, forget the rest of the world. I don't think there's anybody going outside the United States. But if you were to plot this graph on the United States, about 99% of them would be east of the Appalachians.
Correct. Eastern Seaboard.
And you would have half a dozen outliers. I'm talking about colleges people apply to. Forget the ones they're going to. You've got maybe 2 west of the Appalachians.
Right, that they're actually going.
And I guess the question is there a reason why our students seem so focused on the East Coast of the United States? Because one of the complaints I've heard from parents, or at least I've heard from people, is that, my gosh, my kids really can't afford to go. I can't afford to send them, unfortunately, to some of these great schools.
Right.
But a lot of the schools they're missing charge half of what the ones they're going to charge. And the question and they're better schools. Now, one of the other problems, of course, might be that the median SAT scores for some of those Big Ten or Midwestern universities are about 200 points higher than ours. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I can tell you they're in the high 12s to low 13s is what they're quoting as the median middle range. I mean, they'll give you ranges that drop into the 12s or the 11s, high 11s, low 12s, go up to the low 13s on their middle 50% of their class. So I don't know whether that has anything to do with it, but I just can't figure out why our kids don't ever look in the middle part of this country, in the western part of this country.
Well, I think, what I've seen is that a lot of the searches start out where they're looking at California, or they're looking Midwest, or they're looking South, and then as they start having those conversations, where they actually apply to becomes ones that are much closer to home. Whether that be a place that the families know, they're comfortable with, or where it's just that the kids get down to that place of this is where I'm going to apply, and this is what I know. It is an interesting trend, and I'm interested to know more about it because I've heard that same concern. And I think that for the most part, our kids are applying to the Eastern Seaboard, Mid-Atlantic, and New England. And many of them are ending up in New England or even closer to home. You can almost throw a rock at where many of our kids are. terms of how close they are. With that said, we have seen a trend, and you see on the back of this, of kids applying to the UK. We had a student apply to Sweden. Texas has become popular, which is sort of outside of the eastern seaboard. And there is that talk of California. But I think overall, when you look at the map and you plot out where the colleges are, the majority of them are in this part of the world. I mean, that's sort of the way it works in terms of the most schools are on this side of
Well, I'm just wondering, are we getting much in the way of information from, visits from, suggesting kids look at universities out there? Because I usually, few kids, unless their parents or they are doing an awful lot of research, or unless they had a sibling or a relative go somewhere out there, aren't generally, those are in schools not on their radar, but they're outstanding universities out there. And so the question becomes, are we giving them enough of a push to look beyond the borders of New England, Northeast, the Eastern Seaboard, which seems to be where the focus is.
Right.
But you can really get them on New England good, and then the Eastern Seaboard a bit more. But I mean, if a Western school, if not, one of the schools furthest west on this chart is the University of Alabama.
Well,
And the last time I looked, that's a pretty far east university, because you can drive there.
you've got
in 24
University of
hours.
Colorado.
Colorado and Denver.
You have one in Colorado,
Right. I think Case Western.
Jönköping is.
and you've got a couple in Ohio.
Yep,
Yes,
Ohio.
you do have a couple out of the country. I should be unfair, I didn't look carefully enough, but,
All right, well, we get your point, that it really is, I see a lot of Connecticut right here too, so.
Oh, yeah.
It makes sense.
No, it is definitely close by, and I think, the question is, the travel is a piece of it, because that needs to come into the financial statement. I think, as you're saying, there are schools that are better financial buys, especially, I have quite a few students that are looking, or some students that are looking at quite a few schools out in the Midwest, University of Wisconsin, for example, Michigan, this year because of the better buy and also the programs. So I think, we use College Board quite a bit as our promotional tool, and I like it as a search engine. And it's really, as long as you don't put the location in, and most of our kids, when they start the search, really don't care where they go. And so a lot of times that they start is a list that has schools from all over. But when they get down to it, a lot of it comes back to that family conversation. What I find with many of our students is they do want to stay closer to home, or the parents want them closer to home, in a driving distance.
well, they may, but if you look at one of the things I think that really tells a lot about where a person ends up living might be where they go to college, might be where they go to graduate school.
For sure.
More than even college if they go that
Yep.
way. But one of the things people tend to be myopically focused on is the Northeast, and this is not exactly always the job capital and job opportunity capital of the world. When you go to cities in the Midwest that have unemployment rates in the 4s, you do sort of wonder why they would be focused on an area with a rate in the 7s or 8s, although we know college-educated people have a much lower unemployment rate than those who are not.
Correct.
But there are a lot of factors that go into that, a lot of opportunity factors and other things. I'm just curious as to why we don't look, but I mean, I think you're probably right. They know what's there, but sometimes maybe we need to give them a little oomph to.
And we're working on that.
To
We're
look
working on
beyond.
that with our College and Career Center coordinator, and also getting more resources in for our counselors, and trying to widen and broaden our horizon. So we are definitely working on it.
Like tonight is the Danbury College Fair, and there's over 280 schools that are represented there. Most of them, or majority of them, are going to be from our area, but there's some from all over.
Sure.
We had the Florida Institute technology person in today to speak to students. And, Florida is in that eastern seaboard, but it is a different school. And they have one of the best flight programs that's out there. So, I think we have over 65 schools that are coming on site this year to meet with our students, but there aren't always reps from all over. And I think that idea of pushing them to look for program, buy, and fit is definitely a big part of our philosophy. But I hear what you're saying, and I will definitely take it to heart.
Emily?
Is there a conversation nowadays that I know was not there when I went to school, but most programs, when you graduate, you're not done at 4 years anymore. Many are 6+ years. Are kids knowing this, like, now that they're gonna be in a program that's gonna go
It would
6 years?
depend
Or
on
do
the
they pick
program,
the
yeah.
school for the whole thing, or do they go for a bachelor's and then with the idea that they're gonna go to master's? Because, I don't know, it just seems if you're gonna go private for 4 years and then know you have to get a master's, it might make a decision on where you go financially, where you're going.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
And if you're going to apply, we had a
You
conversation.
spend $50,000 for 4 years and then still have to go to 2 years of graduate school to get the degree you want. It could get pricey fast.
Oh, yeah. We had Penn State Institute of Technology in today, and he was speaking to one of my students about nursing or the PA program and where that admission piece comes in for that PA program. So it's definitely a part of the conversation we're having with students. What I find, and you'll see with the data, is that a lot of our students still are not sure what they're going to do. Even though we encourage them to have that clear idea, we still have, this past year, 33% of our students that left us undecided. And that trend's fairly close, if not even lower than what the national trend is of kids that are entering freshman year. Most colleges are not requiring students to declare until the spring of freshman year or even sophomore year in terms of their major. So for many kids, it's that exploration process of going to school, finding out who they are and where it is they're going to go. And many of them are changing their majors as they go. Many may stay within a same focus, but a lot of them are changing as they go through. There are those kids that know specifically, okay, I'm going to be a pilot, I'm going to go to FIT, or I'm going to go to Embry-Riddle, and that's where they go and that's where they stay. Some kids, they leave school and they say, I think I want to be a nurse, and they get in and they find out, yeah, this isn't for me. I'm not really into the blood and gore. And the admission rep today was talking about they have robots that will actually birth in their new lab. And this young man who thinks he wants to be a nurse said, sure that I like that, but I guess I'll find out. So until you've been through that, you may not know.
On your declared major sheet there, I noticed there's 23 undecided. Do you follow that up and find out what they eventually get into, or
And
not?
that goes back to that original question of we don't really have a real good connection with alumni.
And the other question is that with a lot of firms saying that they don't have enough technical people at the engineering, technical, math, and science pre-med,
Yep.
that doesn't, do we do anything to encourage one way or the other, or not?
So the reference is to the last page in this second packet, for the second half of the packet, and it's toward the majors, so declared majors of students in grades, or the graduating years 11, 12, and 13, and your reference is in regards to the decline in the science pre-med majors, and that actually, I went back another year to 2010, which you don't have here on your chart, and that was 17 in that year, and so there's definitely been a decline, and so that's a concern for us as well. Definitely with the growth of those fields. Part of it is the trend of each class, and each class, because we are so small, has individuals that are interested or not interested in those areas. I think this year that trend is going to be higher based on what I've heard, but it does go back to Emily's question about, do kids know now sort of where they're interested in? Maybe they don't know the specific job they're going for, but that field area, and it does go back, each year the classes composite are a little different. If we look back to 2012, we had no fine arts performing technical arts people, whereas in other years we tend to trend around 8 to 10. So it is part of that function. The business economics has stayed fairly stable, as is the engineering technical and math, but that science and pre-med did fall down last year. And, it's a concern. But what I'm hearing from kids in the interviews that I've sat in on this year is trending back up. I think that was more of a blip.
That's good.
Yep. The highest piece for us was that 23, and I was interested to see, where was that trend? Last year it was 29% were undecided. The year before it was 13%, and I went back to 2010, and that was also 33% of the students were undecided. So that tends to be fairly typical, and when we hear nowadays, one of the quotes I hear quite often that I think of when I look at that is that we're educating kids now for jobs that don't exist, or jobs that they may not know that they're even going to school for. And so I think for many of those students that are going into that liberal arts undecided, they're the ones that are going to decide as they go through that pathway and see where they do end up and where that best job fit is. The next sheet, if we go to the second one after college acceptances, was college applications completed by students. One of our pushes is that I do like our students to spread their net, so to speak, as much as they can. You know, that's within reason. College admissions range from $20 to $50 to $100 a pop. So we're talking $500 to $1,000. If you're going to apply to 10 schools. The counter argument to that is that financial aid packages range so much that there is good reason to at least get yourself out there. You can see that our highest applications, there were 13 students that sent out one application. So that was our highest number. As you heard me say earlier, one of my focuses is to get all students to some type of post-secondary education. I really believe strongly that training beyond high school will give you a better option of your career and also a better living condition. We had an increase even in same numbers of 15% of our overall applications, up to 421 from 281 in 2012. So definitely a growth in the number of applications that we're processing, that we're seeing. And again, trying to get students to get out there. The next chart is categorized by competitiveness, and we use Barron's Profile of American Colleges. We use their scales for most competitive, highly competitive, very competitive, competitive, less competitive, and non-competitive. And this is for just the students of 2013, whereas the other sheet that listed those over 200 unique schools were from the 3 years composite, 2011 through 13. Yep.
You had 15 acceptances from UConn?
Yep.
That's really outstanding.
It
That's
is.
become a very difficult school to get into, and
It is.
it's fantastic value
Yeah.
for our students.
Yep.
That's really commendable.
Yeah, it tends to be a school that a lot of our students are looking at. We're trending that way again this year because it is such a good value. It's close by for a lot of kids, but the purchase price and what you're getting for that school has really risen over the last few years. It's also become much harder to get into, so that prestige factor, that used to be thought of as not that competitive. Okay, the next scale is the rankings on the most competitive and highly competitive, and this is class going back from 2013 to 2004. One of the things I find interesting is the graduating class sizes. I think that's interesting. My point of impact, I came in the graduating class of 2006. As I said before, this was our highest acceptance rate within the most competitive since 2006, up 8% from last year. And under highly competitive schools, also the highest since 2005. So we did very well in the most competitive and highly competitive schools category this past year. And I'm really proud of that. The next sheet is the future educational plans. This is actually where students decided to attend. So this is what they declared to us as they were leaving us in the end of June. 87% of the class was accepted to post-secondary schools, programs in the military, and 76 will attend four-year programs within that number. You can see the schools that they're choosing. And as Greg had mentioned, the majority of them are within a couple hours drive. And I think that's an interesting trend. As I mentioned before, quite a few of our students, as they're looking at these schools and they get their packages in front of them, there is a financial piece to it, especially as we look at school costs going up into that $43,000 to $60,000 range. We really are looking at a time for many families that college becomes one of the largest purchases in the students' lives, especially early on. We did have some students that chose to go outside. I think that's a connection from the family, as you can see, if you know the Landegrens. And a lot of our state schools are becoming that high value for a lot of kids, and they're the choice. Post-secondary plans, 3-year comparison. You can see class 2013, 12, and 11, total number of students, and what's happening in terms of the numbers for 4-year, 2-year. The gap year trend, last year there was a lower gap year trend, but I'm hearing that again. That seems to ebb and flow. Gap year for us is a student that has been accepted but decides to do another program for a year before attending school. Directly to work was lower last year. Transition was higher, and the transition academies, we have one at UConn and one at WestConn, have become more viable, and 3 students are within that, and then the military and 2 detainees.
What is transition?
Yeah.
Transition tends to be for students that had an IEP in high school, that have specific needs. There's one at the WestConn campus that allows them to access college with a lot more supports, and there's one at the UConn Torrington campus as well. It's a Highlander program.
Piggyback off of something Michelle had said before, which
Yep.
is something I've been kind of thinking about a lot, but with our enrollment getting smaller each year, and you saying that we really need to be more proactive about getting out there and marketing ourselves, and really thinking more about not just attending in 8th grade, but really kind of being thoughtful about doing 7th and 8th grade, and not even just inviting them here, but also us going there, us going to Montessori and going to Rumsey,
Yep.
and really trying to recruit, so to speak, or at least be able to do that. And I think that that as we look at our classes getting smaller, needs to be a really.
It does. I really believe in the product of Chippewa. You think of it that way. I know that's not what our business is necessarily selling education, but we do a great job for our kids,
Right.
and I really believe in that. So, when I'm in front of others, I'm happy to sell that, so to speak, or pass it along. But I do think we need to explore opportunities to get that word out.
And I think it's okay to say that, and I think we've got something worth selling and to be
Yeah.
proud of. And
We
so
do.
I think that
Something special.
having, a really thoughtful process that we could really kind of build on over the next few years would be really important.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Other questions for me?
Are students taking the SAT 2 subject test? Because my understanding is that they're becoming very sought after by the colleges, and they are often a help in determining a student's academic aid, which can really make a difference whether a student is able to go to the school that they
Correct.
attend. So if a student has 3 or 4 solid SAT 2 subject tests, it really helps them out. The second question on that same theme is, are our courses aligned so that our students can have success in U.S. history or English literature or whatever the subject they might want to take might be?
I am not prepared to speak to that tonight. I can speak off the cuff in that our students that are looking at the more competitive colleges that are in, typically it's our AP courses that are lined up for those classes or for those tests, are taking them because they're required, for like an N1.
No, not AP tests, just the SAT 2 subject tests, which are taught to the high school level of the curriculum instead of the AP, which is taught to the college level curriculum.
I mean, my understanding, and I may be wrong, but I believe that the SAT 2 is at that higher level, so that our biology, which would be this year taught in 9th grade, does not prepare them for the SAT 2. It tends to be the AP biology.
My understanding was that the SAT 2 was a high school level curriculum that they were testing.
That's not my understanding. Trig does prep you for Math 1C, and sometimes it could be even Math 2. But it tends to be, you're either studying on your own or that you're taking the English to be able to take the SAT 2 subject test.
Really?
But that was the same at my last school as well. That biology would not prep you for the bio SAT 2. You would need either AP Bio or the second level.
So the difference between SAT 2 and AP then is?
Not that distinct. And that is an encouragement, is that if you're taking the AP class and studying for the AP test, then you would also study for the SAT 2 and take it at the same time concurrently, since you're prepping for both. I think the big difference is that the SAT 2 for some schools is a graduation or a admission requirement, whereas the AP doesn't tend to be, although it can help. It isn't a necessarily hard and fast rule for admissions on the college side to have the AP tests in front of you. Typically, they're being used to promote the program of a student, but also to use as placement or to be able to get out of courses and go into advanced courses when you're in college. I don't know if I answered your question or not. Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you.
It's always nice to see how things turn out.
Yeah.
Okay, next on our agenda is superintendent's report, and she has 3 items.
I have my goals, but before I do that, I just wanted Vic to give a 2-minute update on the wireless. It came up a couple of weeks ago, and
All right.
Val, who brought it up, is not here, but he is here, and he was just gonna talk and give you an update, and then I'll be happy to do my goals quickly.
About the wireless issue that did present itself, we have determined the cause. The cause was a bigger issue than just wireless. We had some equipment that went bad. We have since replaced it, which stabilized the entire network in the buildings, mainly Booth 3 and Burnham, where it was really causing problem. With replacing this equipment and stabilizing that handshake from our local network to our CEN network that connects us to the rest of the buildings, it stabilized, it allowed the wireless to connect people as needed. We have since have a lot more stability there. We're connecting where we have wireless available. We understand, we know we're not 100% coverage in those buildings. We have some of our old access points that we have used to fill in those gaps, or we just have people hardwired in their classrooms to get everybody connected to our new, more stable network. We now have monitoring on those circuits to know how much bandwidth we're using. When and if we do run up against our maximum bandwidth, as known and seen from the end of last year to the beginning of this year, the reliance and need for stable internet access has grown tremendously in the K-5 schools, because it's needed for them now. So we ran into this little roadblock. We have it handled. We are now set up for future. We have scalability ready for when CEN comes out with their next level of network.
Tell everybody what CEN is.
CEN is the Connecticut Educators Network, which we get our internet connections, our connections to each school. They're rolling out. I don't know how far along they are. I've heard anywhere from 8 to 10 months to 2 years out from when it will get out to this area. So we are definitely handcuffed with what they supply to us, because we do get it for virtually no cost. The other alternative, if we wanted to ramp everything up, is quite a bit of money and recurring cost of every month. So we are working now to have these circuits stabilized, so we can have reliable connections, not just wirelessly but hardwired as well.
Thank you.
So I have
Okay, these are my goals. I had given them to you in, I don't know, July, a draft of them, and I really just tweaked them a little. I used some broad goals, and then what I'll do is probably in January give you an update, a mid-year update, because we're doing this, we're going to get better at the implementation of the schedule, I promise. But number one, we are working to revise the vision and mission of the region, and we've worked with different groups. We've had some parent groups, we've done some board work, we've done administrators, teachers, so that's going to be coming to you probably, I'm hoping, in a month, so that you can work on a little more, and we can work on that and get that done. So that'll definitely be done this year. Number two is your goal from your strategic plan, and it's basically the curriculum goal with Common Core, SBAC, and I'm really very proud of all the work that we've done in a short period of time. We've heard a lot of it today. The middle and the high school is doing a fabulous job with their curriculum work. Teresa is leading the charge, doing an excellent job. The elementary schools also, wonderful job in everything they do. Really looking to embed the Common Core state standards, to use data to inform their instruction, to bring in NWEA, to get ready for the Smarter Balance assessments. We just really are doing a lot, and you're going to hear that as our education meetings continue. Number three is really important, and it's to build a strong administrative team. Tonight you saw many of them. We are really working as a cohesive group. We've brought in instructional leaders, not only 6-12, but also pre-K-12. So we now have leaders in health and PE, and music and art, and something else I can't remember, from pre-K to 12. And that's really helpful. I know, Karen, technology and computers and all of that stuff, digital technology. So it really has given us great vertical alignment. And then the work at the middle high school, those leaders are doing a great job too with the curriculum 6-12. So I'm really happy about that. You're going to hear a lot about that. The high school has done a great job implementing the new schedule. The kids are wonderful. There's no problems. The staff is adjusting. It's usually about the adults who have a harder time adjusting, because change is harder for them than the kids. But it really is, it's wonderful. We're seeing more focused lessons because you have to do it in 57 minutes. The common planning time for teachers is wonderful. The PLC time, the curriculum work, all of those things are allowing people to talk and plan and moving us forward. Lori, who you will meet, you've met, but to really hear from her, is a curriculum expert, and she's really focused on rigor and engagement and student work, and she knows where we will be. And I'll say, doesn't suffer fools lightly. So she is really moving things along under the guidance of Kim and Teresa. So I'm really happy about that. The teacher evaluation is moving along. There are always bumps in the road. There's bumps with the state. The state is not as organized as they need to be with this, but we really are doing the best we can. And that implementation is moving along. Number 5 is Board Goal 2, which has been phenomenal. What Karen Files and her staff have done, along with Vic and the teachers and the tech champions, to get Chromebooks in the hands of all the 8th, 9th, and 10th graders, more grades to follow, to get the wireless going, to get teachers prepared for Moodle, for PowerSchool, teacher evaluation with Bloomboard. They are rewriting K-12, the technology curriculum, so you'll get to see that vertical alignment as we build skills is really important. So I'm thrilled with that. The TV studio, they were here on Thursday of last week. It's almost ready.
Valerie's gonna want to know.
Yes,
Yeah.
Valerie's going to want to know. So anyway, but it's wonderful. It's going to be a great way to advertise what's going on in our schools. And we're getting great feedback from people. I hope you all are reading, and it comes under the communication, my newsletter, because we're trying now to focus a lot on the different curriculum areas every week. And if you really look at it and see, and I know there's a lot of pictures, but the pictures tell 1,000 words. If you look at those captions, you see some of the things the kids and the teachers are doing. It really is high level, so I'm really proud of that.
I was wondering, do you send that to the students?
I don't send it to the students, I send it to the parents, and I send it to anybody on the list. I don't know if we can send it to the students.
I don't know, there's so
I'll look
much
into it.
reporting, there's so many
Maybe
great
at least
pictures.
6-12 or something.
Yeah, there's so many
I
things.
know they
feel
hang
like
it at the
they'd be-
elementary
They would
schools.
be interested in.
I just don't know if it would be like even more of a bog down of our system, but I'll look into it.
Yeah.
Did you skip number 6?
Did I skip number 6? No, I'm still in number 5.
Oh, so you didn't skip to 7?
No,
Talking
now,
about TV.
yeah, I
Okay.
kind of, because that
Alright.
kind of went
I
into
thought you were on 7.
technology also. So number 6, we're working to develop that College and Career Center. Kim Harrison, who's here, is a licensed guidance counselor, which is fabulous. She is part of a consortium of College and Career Center coordinators in the area, so she's meeting with them once a month. She's going for training. She's learning about all those specialized schools so that she can introduce families to what colleges have to offer, not only in the Northeast. And, you know, by the end of the year, we're really going to be in great shape. She's tonight at the College and Career Center at Danbury at the fair. So that's going to take a little while, but I'm really excited about it. We are developing with a consultant a 612 guidance, just a more formalized curriculum, making sure we use Naviance, making sure we're preparing kids for college and career starting in the 6th grade, putting together a parent guide for college and career readiness starting in the 9th grade, so that really everything, we're being very proactive in getting all kids ready for college and career. Really important. 7, the communication, we're out there. Each school is developing a communication plan, and I will give that to you in the evaluation in the mid. If you'll see that the newsletters are coming, we're working on emails and pictures around the school and TV shows, and Kathy did YouTube blogs last week in the newsletter. I don't know if you saw of, what the heck were they? One was walking to school maybe, and what was the other one?
The garden club.
And the garden club. So I mean, we're really out there. We are really, if you can think about where we were 2 years ago to where we are now, it is like, oh my gosh. Last year, lots to be proud of. I talked about the TV studio, working with the board to develop a handbook, and the core values, thank you. The referendum will be in the spring. We, for those who are here, just an update, we did interview 4 architects. We are waiting for their fee proposal, and then we will make a recommendation to the board for an architect. The RFP went out today for the project manager, so we'll have that in place in the next 2 weeks. And we're just trying to do everything correctly, and what we have realized, if we do get a referendum, and if it does pass, everything has to be to the state by June 30th. So there was really no reason to rush it before the holiday, although some people wanted to do that. So it's going to be after the holiday, and more information will follow about that. And then the budget, you know, again, we're looking at the budget this year. Obamacare is going to have an impact on our budget, because any employer that has more than 50 employees, which we do, and if you work more than 30 hours, you have to give them health care. And we don't do that for many of our employees, the paraprofessionals. So we have to look at that. That's going to be an expense. We are working with the elementary schools to really look at how we can streamline and be a little more effective there. When we have these small classes, there's no reason we can't combine maybe some of them during their specials, etc. And just looking at things with just a little lens so we can constantly do things more effectively and efficiently. So that we present a budget that's really appropriate and fiscally responsible, but also provides our students with the best education that they can have. So I went through them fast because it's late, and I'm happy to answer questions.
I like those things. It's nice to have a superintendent with 10 goals like that.
Okay.
I like your goals. There's 3 things I would like to see that don't
Okay.
appear on it, on the list. One is a commitment to keep our facilities in good and safe condition for our children. I think that our selectmen would appreciate that, kind of a statement of determination, and I'm sure many of our citizens would as well. The second thing is, I'd like to have some kind of feedback as to whether or how you feel you should be responsive to the desires of the community, especially with regard to the referendum. Once they speak, will you honor what they've decided? Will you work with them? How responsive will you be to the community when they express their wishes? And the third is, I'd love to see more specific rubrics on curriculum rigor and how you plan to update the curriculum to make it more rigorous, and a little more on results, how to improve results. And what are the rubrics that you might be looking at to do that?
Well, I'll just say a few things, and I can make sure that they are embedded, because everything you've said. Number one, to me, the facilities in good and safe condition is just, it's a given. I mean, that's part of our job. Our buildings are in good condition, and thanks to Don and his staff, they work very hard and are proactive in that area. So I certainly will stick that somewhere and try to give you a little, you know, I don't want to stick it, I mean, you know, put it under one of the titles and address that. Number 2, the referendum. I really have to tell you, at the referendum, reflecting on the process, okay, as someone who's gone through it now for over a year, it's not my goal, it's the board's goal. Goal 1, 2, and 3 were the board's goals before I got here, and this group put me in charge of moving that forward to get us to this point. I really feel that we're in good shape. We have excellent architects who have given us RFQs. We have, I'm sure we'll get some excellent project managers. And I think with everyone working together, and that's the board, that's Bob, that's Don, that's the townspeople, that's the attorneys, I think we will have a referendum that is, as best as we can, error-free. When I mean that, we do everything right. If the referendum passes and the board tells me, move forward and build a new pre-K to 5, that's what I'm gonna do. If the referendum does not pass and the board says, let's put it on hold, that's what I'm gonna do. It's not, you know, I'm not a taxpayer. I work for the Board of Education, and I do what you tell me what you want me to do. So what I do believe is, I do believe that the vote, whichever way it comes from, goes and ends up, will be good information for the board. Okay? And, you know, I can listen to the public and we can have dialogue, but ultimately, I have to do what the 12 people here tell me what to do. I mean, you know, so that's my answer to number 2, and I can put that under communication, and number 9, and I think it'll fit there. And number 3, absolutely, that's gonna come under number 2. You're gonna see that. When you see Lori, she's gonna blow you away. Tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, I'm gonna be here, and I am observing her doing work with grade 10 teachers on curriculum redesign, embedding the Common Core state standards, looking for the rigor. And now, if you remember the teacher evaluation, that teachers are being evaluated on that. Principals are being evaluated on that. Part of what they are being evaluated on is scores, whether they're test scores or assessments that we're giving during the classroom. You know, student learning objectives. Are you saying, okay, 90% of my kids are going to meet goal in this? Are they meeting goal? So, you know, that has to be. So I appreciate your feedback, and I will put it in, and I'll make sure in my January mid-review that it's in there, and you ask more questions, and I'll keep working on it. Okay, Jen?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I actually appreciate, these are your goals, so I appreciate you sharing your goals with us as you move forward for the year.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Tomorrow night, for anybody who's interested, we are having, and this comes under communication also, we are having a Connecticut Association of the Gifted speaker tonight, a board member, tomorrow night, who's going to talk about the Common Core and gifted strategies, and how those strategies are good for all children, not just gifted students. It'll be right here at 6:30. Everyone's invited. I not only invited our school district, I invited all the surrounding school districts, so anyone who wants to come. I think it's good that we start to get more parent workshops going. That's one of my goals that's not even here, but it comes under communication. And also to include other school districts so that we start to share the wealth, and they can come to us and we can come to them and all of that stuff. And then
Excuse me, are
yes.
you going to record it too? That might be good.
I'll try. I will try to record it if she'll allow me. I have given to Sue Stumpf, and now I'm giving to Jen, and I'm giving to Pete, who's really not new, but he's newish. These are new board member packets that we purchased from CABE that have a lot of information in there, and I think they'll be helpful to you. We talked about that at the retreat.
Exciting.
And if there's anybody on the board who wants one, because you never got one, I'm happy to order another packet, you let me know. Okay? And that's my chair, my
Excellent.
report.
Thank you, Superintendent's report. Very good. Now, just to, in case anybody didn't read all the minutes from the last meeting, one of our board members, Pete Tagley, inquired as to whether we, and by we, that means Don, maintains a list or it has any special way of noting local vendors as opposed to any other vendors who might be appropriate for either bids, or I think even more in particular, Pete was asking for any kind of work that falls under the bid limitation, as far as what kind of lists or what kind of database Don might handle. And that is why our next agenda item is for Don O'Leary to tell us about that.
Well, if you don't mind, we actually took it up as part of the facilities committee meeting this evening. I'd be happy to comment on that and let Don fill in anything he needs to.
Well, I don't know. He's on the agenda. Did you prepare to talk about this yourself, Don, or did you want Greg to talk?
Either way is fine. Same thing.
I think you wanted
You wanted Greg?
Greg to
You did
start
want-
and
all
then
right.
to add,
Then go ahead.
if you don't mind.
Yeah, when Pete had raised it last time, I wanted to make sure that the facilities committee had an opportunity to address it because it's within our area of concern. And I wanted to make sure that it was addressed and that due consideration and, was given to the recommendation. And so we did address that tonight at the facilities committee meeting. One of the things we discussed with Don, and he can give you more details about exactly what his job, one of his jobs is. One of the reasons we have him here is because we want him to be able to assess and determine what we need to do to repair, maintain, and make decisions regarding the buildings we have in the district. And he has spent a large amount of time in all 4 of the schools district's buildings, evaluating them and trying to maintain these buildings. We also expect him to go out and, when it's necessary, first of all, he's been developing in-house talents for dealing with a lot of the issues that come up. We have had during his tenure. He's had people on his staff who are licensed electricians, licensed plumbers, and others who are able to give us, detailed and continuing services in-house that we formerly would have had to go out for, so that he's been able to engage people who provide the requisite skills without really any additional cost to the district over what it would be, done to hire the people that we have. It's been a very good working relationship. It's helped us out quite a bit. But what Don does is he goes out if he needs to go outside of the district because we don't have the abilities in-house or we don't have the manpower in-house to handle it because he's got a limited number of people, to go out and identify appropriate contractors based on the contractor's abilities and a variety of other factors. And he does use local people. I've seen a list of approximately 71 contractors that are local contractors that have been used in recent times in order to handle some of these items that come up. In addition, there have been bids, there have been requests for bids put out there on a variety of things, not just on required bidding, but there's also been inquiries made and advertisements made over various things that have been done over the period of time to reach out and try to find these things. We don't have the kind of detailed doing business with Region 12 program that the federal government has, for example, where you have massive federal laws that require a certain percentage of contracts for all the federal agencies to be let to businesses that are small, disadvantaged, minority-owned, women-owned. I mean, they've got a whole raft of different set-aside programs. They've got detailed programs of working those things through. I had the pleasure of working for the Air Force's Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization Office when I was younger, and I can tell you that we do not have the hundreds and thousands of person hours, man and women hours available to us to run those kind of programs. And so if we're going to run a program, we have to determine what our goal is here. Is our goal to run a business program, or is our goal to keep the schools functioning? And so to some extent, we have to balance that. He does make a strong effort to have work done locally where that's appropriate, but we have to recognize that he's got a primary duty to maintain these schools and to exercise judgment in that regard. And when he looks for a contractor, it isn't just looking for a contractor that necessarily is local or necessarily is one thing or another, but he's looking for contractors that, based on their qualifications, their history, their availability of the skills, having the necessary equipment, having the necessary man and woman power, personnel, proper pricing structures, knowledge of the subject area, and the ability to not make the letting of a couple $1,000 contract turn into more than the value of the contract in his time in dealing with the supervision of it and aftermath. So for a variety of reasons, he selects contractors that are appropriate to it. And he does make a strong effort to get local people. And I think that at this time, I don't think that the facilities committee can recommend any formal type of program where we are going to go out and prepare materials and try to solicit people to show interest in doing business with the region. We're just not that big. And so I think that that's more or less what we'd recommend. That if you have any further questions on it, feel free to ask, and I'll do the best I can, and Don's here to answer them, and we'll be happy to answer those questions. But we did look into it. We did spend a good bit of time discussing it and tried to understand what it is the region's doing, what our goals are, what we're trying to accomplish, what Don's responsible to do, and what's reasonable in light of the circumstances based on the need that he has, the limited resources that he has for doing what we expect him to do. So that was all discussed in a very comprehensive format during the facilities meeting.
Okay, see, the reason I asked that is I thought maybe we could get it in less words, but. Thank you, Greg. Pete, did you get this list? Were you on the committee? Did you see the list?
No, I was not on the committee, but I have a couple of points I wanted to make.
Okay, well, I just wanted to, if you want to see this, as far as your curiosity before, it was just handed to me, and I know Greg wanted a copy. You want to pass this around? I marked off the ones that are actually within the.
I just have one.
Okay. Yes, Peter.
I raised this issue the last time because I realized that when you hire people to run certain aspects of your educational system, whatever area they work in, they do have a tendency to have their own vendors from past experiences. I'm sure the superintendent is an example of that also. I'm sure she's brought in people who she's known from the past or had credible references, et cetera, et cetera. My point was that very rarely have I ever seen a local vendor working up here or at the Washington Primary School. And on one hand, you don't want to tell people who you hire who they should hire. They have to find out through some process who's good and who isn't good. But the issue I raised is that we have a $21.5 million budget. And I ventured to say, with all the jobs that we can bid out under $6,000, or we don't even have to bid them out, that it's profitable for us from a public relations standpoint alone, and through a process of finding out who the good guys are and who the not so good guys are, that it pays to employ these people. They send their children here, they pay the taxes, they're local. If we need the roof shoveled, if we need some emergency here, they're in the neighborhood. And there may be some guys who aren't so great, but I've lived here for over 30 years, and I've hired a lot of local vendors. And I would say 90% of them know how to plumb a house, know how to electrify a house, know how to roof a house, plow the driveway, plant your shrubs. There is somebody in every one of these towns that is good as any job we need. There are some who are not large enough from a firm standpoint to handle any major job. But when you're dealing with jobs under $6,000, those are not major jobs. There's no major contracting equipment. We used to have Wyand pump the septic systems. I don't know how his pricing structure was. I don't know who's pumping the septic systems now, but I'm sure there must be guys in these three towns that are capable of pumping our septic systems. So my idea was that, one, it's good public relations for the board, it's good for the budgetary process, it's good in general to use local vendors whenever we can. And I realize it's difficult for board members, people who work from us, to change habits. I do it in my own business. I have a tendency to hire people you've known from the past, or you've built up relationships with as you've been working in the system. And my theory, though, is that personally, there's a political angle to this. The federal government does it, the state governments do it, local governments do it. It's good public relations to set aside money to hire local guys. Now, I'm not going to put a motion on the floor to accomplish that because I don't think it's appropriate. But I think somehow we have to get ingrained into our system the fact that local people are valuable assets. And they've been here, their families have been here longer than we've been here, many of them. And that it's good to make an effort to try and get them some money.
Right, you said that before and you've said it again, but do you see the list? It seems as if he has a very good take on local people. And is this same company doing the septic pumping?
Wyant does the septic pumping.
No, Wyant doesn't do my septic, however, they do work for me. They did some burn work for me. Wyant's prices are not attractive for doing the septic.
The other list that I gave you was just the same list, but marked up to show you which ones are actually within the region. That is local, and then the other one that I had, I just marked them off as you were talking, so you can see the numbers that are from Roxbury, Washington Depot, or Bridgewater. Maybe it's the one that Greg's holding at.
Yeah, it's actually, I took it back because I wanted to look at, see who did that was on there for septic.
But I was
then you
taking
wanted
it one step further, if I may interrupt for a moment. What I was taking it is that if I were to ask you in the last 3 to 5 years, how much billing has been given to local vendors, what would the answer be?
A significant amount, Peter.
I don't know, I'm asking that
No,
question.
a significant amount. I mean, local vendors did the roofs of this school when we had the big snow emergency. Local vendors did the roofs of our schools. That was over $50,000 of work that went to local vendors. Local vendors have done a substantial amount of work on the local playgrounds. They've done substantial work in a variety of areas. I mean, this is not a circumstance in which we're not using local vendors. We're using a lot of local vendors. We do not have the requirement of a set-aside program like the federal government, number one. Number two, you're talking about a program that would have to be administered if you create such a program. But what we are doing is we are valuing local people and where their prices are good. Now, you mentioned we have people in this district that know how to plumb a house and know how to roof a house. Well, the funny thing is, this district doesn't own a house. This district owns what are commercial buildings, and the needs and expectations of doing the kind of work in commercial buildings that we own, the school institutional buildings that we own, are not the same as what you would do in a house. The other thing you've got to remember is this is not houses are generally of one of a limited number of types. This building is a lot more complicated, not the least of which is because you don't have a set of plans you can pull out, roll on the table and say, here's what we got. Because in the 40 years this building's been in here, in the 140 years Booth Free School has existed, a lot of things have been done to those buildings that are no longer on plans and not available to you. And as a result, every time you walk into and open a situation, you're in a new level of difficulty and with new challenges. And so it's very important that our building, our facilities director, obtain specifically the right people for the job, or it ends up being a very difficult thing. And it would be one thing if you were bringing in all these people from his previous lives, but he's not. He's bringing in largely for these small jobs and for a lot of large jobs, local people where it's possible. So that's it. I'm sorry for the long answer. There's a lot in your unpack.
I do agree with Pete. And I do understand that there is a big difference between a house and a commercial building. But I also think that, as Pete is saying, that we all need to be more mindful about our community and being local. And that on the PTO of our own school, we're trying to be. That's our motto this year, is to really support our local businesses. And that's not to say that all the local businesses are going to be able to do what needs to be done in the buildings. And it doesn't mean that it needs to be a program that's set up. It doesn't need to be elaborate, but it needs to be something that we're thoughtful about. So if there's a business in the local community, in all 3 towns, that want to be part of a list, they could then, like we were talking about last time, create an opportunity for them to approach us, put themselves on a list. And I completely would never dream of telling Don how to do his job, because I know he does a beautiful job and knows exactly who to rely on, and that makes his life easier. However, at the same time, that doesn't mean we have to have all new people, local, coming in and doing everything, but you piecemeal. You try to just throw out a little work, a little bit, and then he might be pleasantly surprised that so-and-so can do something, and it might eventually be something that evolves. It doesn't mean it has to be 100% of the local businesses, but I don't think that it would kill us to be more mindful to support our local businesses, no more than we want to support our local businesses in our own little town. And I'm saying the Depot because we have a business district in the Depot. But for me, when I want to purchase prizes, I'm going to go to the Hickory Stick and buy a gift certificate, or I'm going to go to the pantry, because I'm trying to be mindful that that's how we support our local businesses. So I appreciate what Pete's saying, and I think it's just for us to be more thoughtful about including other businesses. And if they want the work and they show an interest, then the least that we could do is allow them the opportunity.
Well, all I was going to say is I think any local business person that wants to do business with the region and wants to suggest that they have capabilities is always more than welcome to communicate with the region and let them know, and to be referred to Don and for him to know that. I think you're right. I think we do, and I think he has done a lot with local businesses. But I think that what seemed to be suggested was a more formal program. And once you create a program, you've got to administer a program. And once you administer it, you've got to make sure that you handle things in a particular way. And what we don't want to turn this into, in a district that has major financial challenges and major facilities challenges, is a political thing, as opposed to trusting the judgment of the person. When we put Don in charge, we had a situation when he came in here. We had a situation in which our buildings were in dire need of significant work, and they were not being cared for appropriately. And we found out the buildings are awfully complex. So I think that he's doing a great job of trying to put them back in order while using as many local people as have presented themselves and as have demonstrated the appropriate needs. And I think that's right. I think we should be concerned, and I think we will be concerned.
I want to share the same sentiment. I agree with you about Don, but I don't know if I should even say this, but when I'm at Washington Primary School, I sometimes see local trucks, and a lot of times I don't. So I'm not saying that we need to all the time. I trust Don. I'm just saying that it's something that we should just be thoughtful of, to not just have them on a list, but maybe actually call them every once in a while. That's all.
Anything you want to say, Don?
I think it's all.
Okay. I think we can trust Don to hire the best of the local contractors and the best of the non-local as necessary. And thank you for bringing it to our attention, Pete. This is the end of our agenda. Opportunity for the public to comment on agenda items. We've got a very patient but quiet public, I guess. All right, hearing nothing, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
If I may, I'll just mention one thing. I'm Jay Combs from the Washington Supply. We're here tonight just to listen to what's going on in all the local vendors. Not trying to pull up anything, but every dollar you spend at a local vendor goes back 3 times into the community. So that's quite a savings, because all that money comes back to the school system, because we pay, as they said, we pay taxes, things like that. So we don't expect everything. No way in the world could, as you've already said, that some of our companies aren't big enough to do some of the jobs that are needed at the schools. But like just say, you've mentioned Wines, yes, they're a small operation. They don't have the biggest truck in the world. But if you say, listen, no, we need this done. This is what we're getting for outside bids. Could you come close to that? Maybe they can. Same thing like things for us. If you want to paint another room, something of that nature, so you need 300 gallons of paint. Give us a chance at it. Tell us you need 300 gallons of paint, what your requirements are, because there are many different grades of different products. We would never give you the worst product, no way in the world for that. I mean, we carry Unite Paint, which is an excellent brand, but that goes for $50 a gallon. But they're specific that can do the same job for a school system. We sell a lot of that to the gunnery, which is like $38 a gallon. So there's a $12 a gallon savings. So I say, that's what we're asking for. It's just to have a fair shot at the business is done in our community, because we support the schools totally with our taxes. Can't really say the 5 owners actually of the supply actually have kids anymore in school, but we just support the schools in any way we can, whether it's bake sales, things of that nature, or guys have a habit of liking a few sweet snacks, so they go over to the market. If there's a bake sale outside, George has been nice enough to let, have there for whatever reason that day. He's losing income that day because of the bake sale. But the money that's going to, whether it's Girl Scouts, whether it's one of the clubs at school, whether it's a car wash, that's coming directly back to the school. And we depend on our communities, each and every one of us, to stay in business. So that's what we ask. Thank you.
That's a good point too, is that local businesses are first to donate their time or their services
Oh, yes.
to school needs.
Yeah, I don't think it's just school needs. Sean Woodward, I'm a construction contractor in town. Daryl's here, Elliot's here. He's going to have kids in school, or already does probably. You know, I did it, as Mr. Bedini knows, my company put the new windows in the town hall. I'm a local guy, perfectly capable of that. I believe Elliot is actually doing some work in the town hall now. So, you know, and when it comes to licensing, you know, plumbers, electricians, I carry my electrical license as well. There's no separation of what our licenses allow us to do. There's not a special school for commercial work as compared to residential work and whatnot. Maybe in this town, some local people may be more expensive because it's expensive to live here. But, you know, there are tons of people such as myself who pay a lot of tax, take nothing from it. I don't have kids in school, I won't. So it's, all I'm doing is reiterating what everyone else is. And there's a lot of local people around. I've donated my time for over 12 years to the Antique Show, which benefits the library. Daryl's done the same thing. It's a community-based situation, and when we're not asked, I mean, it's not even that has to be special treatment, but when it's not sort of a little bit of an effort to show that, hey, there's something potential to do, that just doesn't feel very good. So.
And I should have said not just first to donate for school needs, but for student needs as well. Anyone else? Well, Don's right there. Shake hands with him on the way out and give him your business cards. That's the first step. And I think if that's it, motion to adjourn? So
Second.
all in favor? Thank you.
Aye.
And good night.
Thank you.
9:30.